All right. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to May's Planning Commission meeting. The time is 7:01. I'm going to call this meeting to order, and our secretary is not here yet. So, would you propose that I do attendance, Christian? All right. I'm going to have to do this off memory. All right. We'll start. Remember, I know I'm like frazzled.
Just point.
Member Holmes.
Here.
Member DeVault. Thank you. Member Bishop.
Here.
Member Wortella.
Here.
Member Manchester.
Here.
Excuse me. Member Plinkenhorn.
Here.
Member Newman.
Here.
Member Cox. I think that's everybody, right? Thank you. Yeah, Schenkel present. Okay. Trust everyone's had time to review this evening's agenda. If you have any comments or questions, can talk about those. Otherwise, I'll entertain a motion for approval of this evening's agenda.
I make a motion that we accept the agenda as submitted.
We have a motion on the floor from Holmes. Do we have support?
Wortella, I support.
Supported by Wortella. Any additional comments or questions? All right, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. Thank you. This time we will open it up for citizen comments. Anyone in the crowd here or online would be welcome to share their comments. If you do, please state your name, your address, and you are limited to 4 minutes. I will give about 15 or 20 seconds for people to jump up to the microphone.
Yeah, and we're not linked online anymore.
Oh, okay.
With hybrid.
Oh.
So
All right. You're it. Do I need to go like name by name? No. All right. All right. Moving on to our next agenda item, approval of last meeting's minutes from April 10th. Again, trust you've had time to review those. Any comments or questions? If not, I'll accept a motion for approval.
Motion to accept the minutes from April 10th as submitted.
Motion on the table from Holmes. Do we have support?
Manchester, support the motion.
Support from Manchester. Any further discussion or questions? If not, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. Thank you. All right, and we are on to our village manager report.
yes, Chair Schenkel, I did want to clarify when I talked about online, we're still live on YouTube, still stream live. It's still archived for as long as there is a YouTube, I guess, but we don't set up a Zoom hybrid link. Updates our new village hall. Since we last met, you'll see progress. Tomorrow you'll start to see the trees and the lot cleared. Hopefully by the end of the week, early next week, you'll start to see a hole being formed in the ground as we move forward on that project. Pretty exciting. Has a lot of governmental attention as it is a financed with cash government project, which at total all in with furniture, sign, everything will be somewhere in the neighborhood of 2.8 million. And so what that saves the taxpayers is between 1.7 and 2.2 million in interest payments over the course of a 30 or 40 year bond, which typically for that project would be 30 years, but the village would have had an option to extend out to 40. So pretty good deal, and help the gateway coming in on Richardson Street, and hopefully have some news in the future about the Richardson Prairie Street area. I'll pause and see if there's any questions specific to the new village hall. Be happy to answer anything.
Jim, when is the expected completion date again?
We conservatively hope to be in the building within the first 90 days of 2024. When we open later this week, we'll open the bids, reference furniture, and within that, I think we wanted a November timeline to start receiving furniture, but kind of built in some insurance weeks, just as we know construction goes and sometimes never meets the timeline, but I hope to be in no later than mid-March. So, some of you have seen the sidewalks. Sections of them were replaced last week. The reason that is it was under a year warranty. Sections that were replaced did not meet the warranty specs, and that's why that was done, but it's all completed. We're going to find an appropriate timing to power wash the entire downtown again and then reseal it. Right now we're looking at availability, and then of course with the car show coming up, our goal would hope if we can get it done before, but if we can't, it'll be a timing issue. But you'll see that continue on downtown. And then an update with the downtown programming. We have from Wednesday, June 14th through Wednesday, August 16th. So every Wednesday minus July 5th. So every Wednesday except the week of July 4th, we're going to host what we're calling the Berg Days of Summer. We've entered into contracts with 18 different bands. Bands that I think one played one of the bars in Vicksburg one time, but the rest have not, with the goal of those bands drawing their followers into town. 6 food trucks, 1 dessert truck. We've entered into contracts with, in an event, 1 week you'll see a 32-foot rock climbing wall. We'll have mechanical bulls 1 week. We'll have kids' activities with inflatable, different games set up. The Vicksburg Cultural Arts will be doing programming in 101 Prairie. We've secured 3 of the weeks will have silent disco. So 50 people at one time could be listening to 3 different types of music inside 107 North Main Street for activities. So we're looking forward to that. You'll see, hopefully in 2 weeks, part of what is an action item under DDA involves some of the marketing we have around that, and I'll explain that during that time. But really looking forward to that. Gotten pretty decent behind-the-scenes response. The businesses are really looking forward to it, and you'll see a lot of social media presence and other type marketing. We're looking for that program in other items that are going on in the village of Vicksburg. So pause there. Be happy to answer any questions. Fantastic.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Mallory. Appreciate that.
If I can, on the next item, introduce Kyle Mucha from McKinnon Associates. Kyle and I met here a couple weeks ago, and we felt it would be a good opportunity to we have new members of the board, and to kind of refresh the whole why a master plan requires an update, the progress we've made so far, kind of what the input from our citizens are to this point. And then I've asked Kyle as well to kind of get into the Planning Commission's role from this point forward, as well as the council. He'll be back next week for the village council meeting to present to them as well. So, Kyle.
Thank you, Mr. Mallory. So as Mr. Mallory mentioned, Planning Commission's role is essentially the steward of a master plan. The master plan is a guiding document for municipality. Am I good? Okay, sorry. Sounds like a lot of Feedback. It's a guiding document for the municipality on where they want to see themselves in 10 to 20 years. Some are outside of maybe 30 years as well. Also under state law, as Mr. Mallory mentioned, every 5 years the plan must be at least reviewed, if not updated and renewed. So planning commissions are tasked with every 5 years at least reviewing the master document for consistency and then moving forward with any updates or rewrites as deemed necessary by the governing body. So that in essence is what your master plan is. It also involves public engagement to allow your residents and citizens input on the direction of their community. Further in there too, there are components of complete streets, community facilities analysis, demographics, economics, other items as well that help kind of give outside lookers an overview of what the community entails and what it involves. So with that, the community engagement section 2 on here, we compiled just a brief synopsis overall of the various engagement that we did. As you may recall, we did 3 public engagement workshops where we set up at various locations throughout the village, solicited feedback from residents and stakeholders, and then in addition, we worked with village staff on collecting additional short surveys. I think they only had 4 or 5 questions on there where staff and myself went to local area businesses for a few hours to solicit input from the patrons of what they would like to see from the village. Regarding the online survey, that was the one that was on SurveyMonkey. It was live from last fall till earlier this year. We received a total of 100 responses, 86 of which residents indicated that 86 respondents indicated they are residents of the village, 14 said otherwise. Of those, most of them, a third or so lived within the village 1 to 5 years, and then moving on from there. According to the survey results, some of the most positive aspects we had was a sense of community, the area itself, school districts, so all positive things to see from our area, the residents who took that. To improve the village, residents listed an opportunity to diversify retail options. So that'll be a component that we discuss later on tonight as well, and also a component we'll ask you as we kind of envision the future land use and what direction the village should go in the next 15 to 20 years. So of that diversified retail options, 42 respondents indicated that. Offer more transportation options such as non-motorized pathways was at 36. And then more entertainment, dining, and nightlife options at 34 respondents. That was just from the online one. I believe in previous packets, the Planning Commission does have those results as well. Nothing significant changed from when that was provided to you a few months ago to there. Maybe a couple more respondents came in, but the overall intent is still there. Moving on to our supplemental community engagement, that's those forums that we went to the local businesses on. We had 4, I believe village staff also went additional weeks to other area businesses to solicit feedback from residents. A colleague of mine did put this together a little bit for you as well to give you a breakdown of what some of the most positive aspects are. Overall, dining and entertainment options were one of the most positive aspects of the village, followed by sense of community, activities, festivals, and events, and then also history of the area. So as it moved on, all positive aspects we found from soliciting feedback from the community supplemental survey. Areas of improvement. More entertainment, dining, and nightlife was number 1. Greater variety in retail options, number 2. Thriving downtown area was number 3. And then better or more parks and recreation as number 4 of the respondents there. Closely followed by entertainment options and better maintenance of, I believe, roadways was number 6, but didn't meet up there. So I'll stop there for any questions on public engagement. And this was started back in about October, November. We finalized it in February, so we had about 4 months of soliciting public engagement. There was 2 postings, I believe, also in the quarterly newsletter. So overall, we had over 200, 300 people between the online survey, the public engagement we held in person, and then also the supplemental. So 300 respondents or so. And for us, we felt that was pretty confident and have a good indicator of those interested in the village direction. Mr.
Kyle,
Wentz?
just to confirm, the data that we're going over tonight, is this just a supplemental or is this all, the combined, all of it?
So earlier was the online survey respondents. This right here, this graph is just a supplemental.
Okay.
We try to be more pointed. Instead of that, we found that having the information of how long have you lived here in the village, not as applicable. We wanted it to be a quick 1-minute survey for those who are at business. You know, probably half of us don't want to be bothered when we're eating with family, so we wanted it to be less intrusive. So that's what this is here. That's all right.
This is the first group that was public engagement, minus us proactively going to the public spots.
So that's what we found there.
And then, this is specific to when we went to the different restaurants and public spots, and I think we had Teresa 3 or 4 Thursdays in a row just walking downtown, handing them out, the people who were downtown.
Not to get ahead of myself, which I occasionally do. I'm just curious, do they both kind of follow each other, the data, would you say, or?
There wasn't, the second had less questions, because we felt that people would not want to take the totality of time of the presentations that we did. So a lot of them we'd hand out, that our goal was they could fill it out in 5 minutes. So I guess the variable is the information we put on the second survey instrument was based in part by what we had received by the previous survey. So it's, when I say it's skewed, it mirrored the top indicators from the previous survey, and we wanted to condense. And then we did leave a space, a generic space they could fill in whatever they wanted to. So there's just that variable. Shorter is, yes, it did mirror because of the way we styled the survey.
Yep. So again, probably all said and done, 300 plus, patrons, residents, citizens did provide comment. For us, really, any 2 to 4% of a population is fantastic. Vicksburg's over 3,000, so we got 300, so we probably have between 8 and 12, depending on, if we can count accurately when I, go there and do a head count. So still a very good respondent rate we viewed, more than we probably anticipated, so on that. So that was from the public engagement side, and kind of what helps drive the further sections in here we'll talk about too. So any other questions on our engagement?
Mr. Newman, can I ask you a question? I know you were involved in the previous master plan. I'm just curious, the participation levels on that one compared to this, is there anything you can share with us?
You're asking me to remember a while ago.
We looked at that, Chris.
And we've had, when we did this before, we did have a little higher than average response, which it has always showed. I think the response on this one is actually higher than when we did the update in 2015. When we did the complete rework in 2010, we did have a higher response then, but we really dragged that out and really tried to get as many people as we can. But I still think even surveys and community engagement on there, we were maybe 15 to 16% of village population at that time, which was less than it is now. No, I was actually, to hear that hitting about 10% number on this is fantastic for survey response for something along these lines. I think in talking with Kyle early on with this, I was saying it would be great if we could hit 7 or 8, and we left that pretty far behind. So I think it's encouraging. The percentage response that we've had shows that we do have a fair number of people that are paying attention to what's going on and are interested in moving this forward in a correct direction. But it is tracking a little higher than what the previous two were. But that stands to follow. There's been a lot of changes in the village. We have a higher population count now, and more people are aware that their voices are being heard as far as what's happening. So they feel a little more comfortable actually getting out there and being involved. So that's if that answers your question. Thank you.
Further questions on public engagement? Next item that Mr. Mallory asked us to also look at is the housing analysis. This is a very abbreviated housing analysis. We can go out there and spend hours and days collecting data. However, based on within our scope and working with village staff, um, we narrowed it down to this. So using birth rates, death rates, migration, whole other slew of spreadsheet numbers, we found that projected, and I want to emphasize that, projected housing numbers and population in 2040 for within the village is 4,900, just under 5,000 residents by 2040. Again, that's going to be dependent on economic factors, area jobs, what the economy is potentially doing, birth rate, death rate, migration, all that items. So of that, we found that a projected household number for within the village to satisfy the 4,941 residents is 1,930 housing units. Based on 2020 census data, the number of housing units within the village is 1,494. So indicates that within the next 17 years, we'll need a total of 436 housing units to satisfy the projection. And of that, again, I want to really emphasize birth rate, death rate, migration, economic, key impacts. Pfizer expanding, Stryker expanding, all these other regional components will add and tie into this. So that is kind of our housing analysis as well. That additional 400 plus units would be needed to satisfy population projections.
Motivations to look at this is there's a number of entities examining the housing needs of Kalamazoo County and Southwest Michigan with growth and projections to attract manufacturing industry and looking at high level studies that will have a workforce and then it looks at available housing at different levels, if you will, and affordable housing specifically in Kalamazoo County is short by tens of thousands of housing units. So what data we'll use in trying to do a predictive analysis of the future is if there are decisions for the village to examine, we have X amount available land, is the ROI better to develop in a residential area, R1, R2, what type of housing to capture the person who might work in a Portage or a city of Kalamazoo, but would like to live in a village like Vicksburg. Do we have that available housing option? So that's one of the aspects that we asked Kyle for some of that information, but we'll be a recipient of those larger studies that are really comprehensively looking at this.
And just to give you an idea of the scope of what 436 homes look like in 17 years, the Allen Edwin Centennial Development that started in 2006 or 2005, by the time that is built out, will contain 435. And that has been, let's see, 2005. So we're getting on to 18 years. So we would need to do that again in the next 17 years in order to keep up with projected demand in this area. Just to give you an idea on scale.
A part of that will also look at like multi-housing unit options that could fit within that schematics of not only a housing neighborhood, but multi-housing units as well.
And Mr. Holmes, to bring back to some of your public engagement, we did receive kind of a wide, I'll say, plethora of housing style options when we had the 3 engagement opportunities as well. They varied from large lots, like MC McDonald Way, to senior living, well, not senior living, but apartment style living facilities where it's, 3-tiered floors, dwelling units like Mr. Mallory mentioned. So there is a seem to be kind of a wide variety of housing styles that the public would be interested in. None during our collection of those three data, not one really stood out the most. It was kind of just a nice scatter. Potentially smaller lots with homes, not so much the Allen Edwin style currently in Centennial, maybe a little larger seemed to kind of be the trend more, but overall it was a nice spread and healthy mix, I'd say. So as we consider moving forward through, kind of what the next 10 to 15 years for the village looks like, I want to help preface that for the Planning Commission too. So our key findings, if there's no other questions on kind of the housing analysis. Number one, we felt deal with retail. So key finding was increase the retail availability within the village to offer a variety of shopping and dining options to residents and visiting patrons. And then our recommendation is to strategically expand the commercial designation within the downtown area and commercial corridors. This will increase retail opportunities and strengthen the commercial fabric of the community. This would be done to ensure minimal impact on surrounding residential land uses. So what we mean by that is to potentially also, help guide commercial development where it's appropriate within the village and not out per se, really in a planning world in a field where there is no nice buffer. So it would already be kind of more focus on what has already been established. And that questions on retail? All right. Downtown area, encourage multi-use buildings within the downtown region, such as along Main Street and Prairie Street to permit both commercial enterprises and residential dwellings. What we mean by, again, multi-use is potentially, commercial on the lower level, residential above. So our recommendation, to foster both commercial and residential growth based on community input, established a mixed-use district in a defined area of the downtown. For clarity, the current master plan does talk about a workplace designation for future land use, which would encourage or permit residential and commercial uses.
I think it's important to note in that downtown area that those commercial uses would be on first floor and there wouldn't be residential uses on the first floor. All residential uses would be above the first story.
This zone would then prioritize commercial space, again, on the ground floor, like Mr. Mallory said, with residential units above. Allowing a flexible use of the space, this district can help the village expand its residential housing options while promoting commercial development. So there too, we don't need to look at having to break ground on fields or what we call green fields where there is no infrastructure. We can look at adaptive reuse of existing commercial spaces that could then permit residential stories above. Housing, encourage appropriate housing development to meet the projected demand for residential dwellings in the next 20 years. Encourage redevelopment in existing housing stock to enhance existing neighborhoods. A recommendation is to suggest increasing the residential density in carefully evaluated locations to accommodate demands of a rising population and satisfy the preference of current residents. What we mean by that is, again, look at where infrastructure is already available, where public utilities are potentially already available, so that way it'd be less impact and less cost on running all those new services. We'd want to evaluate sites that could accommodate the type of housing demand that would come forth from a developer. I think a lot of us remember that recently down 22nd Street a few years ago, new sewer was installed to help accommodate the housing. So this would help focus that type of housing development where maybe those utilities are already in existence or could be easily upgraded as well. Finding number 4 would be to encourage the expansion of non-motorized networks within the village to permit multimodal transportation options. Multimodal being bicycling, walking, skateboarding, rollerblading, anything non-motorized is really what it gets to in that. So then our recommendation is to revise the zoning ordinance to mandate the installation of pedestrian pathways such as sidewalks in all new developments. This will promote a safer and more accessible transportation within the village. Additionally, it's recommended to increase the width of road shoulders during road work to allow for non-motorized travel. Some communities or even county roads maybe have a 1 or 2 foot shoulder. Some communities encourage road commissions to extend that to 4 or 5 feet of a shoulder to encourage multimodal transportation options such as bicycles to help give a little bit more. I know Kalamazoo Township is currently working on that. I know Oshawa Township is looking at enhancing their non-motorized transportation. You know, we got a nice village working on getting multimodal transportation into Portage, then into Kalamazoo. So there is a regional draw. I'll stop talking there in case Mr. Mallory wants to expand further on that. But there is a desire within the county to offer expanded services that don't focus on a vehicle.
And I think one of the reasons this finding is listed, it was a top response from the people who participated in this, and I hear it quite regularly, of having, it's an attraction in this village, the amount of non-motorized space that we have for walkability and getting from point A to point B, and hopefully, you know, we've taken the trail up to the Portage city limits, and I'm hopeful that they're still on schedule in the next 18 months to bring that trail down to match ours, so to continue that network.
So that's a recap of their, you know, kind of the key findings we've had so far through the public engagement process, along with some recommendations as we continue to move forward with the master plan process. And then also at the request of planning commission members in the past and working with village staff, we provided kind of a brief, what we hope to be the timeline for completion of the master plan. Obviously, right now we're in May. So, you know, task of master plan right now is the overview, role and responsibilities. We've kind of briefly touched on public engagement synopsis, key findings. Next month, we're looking to finalize some future land use recommendations with staff and then present those recommendations as long as staff sees fits to the planning commission. Those would be key targeted areas and not as a whole village wide, but more partnership with village staff to ensure that there's, you know, it's moving in the proper direction. July then would be our draft master plan review, which we will ask planning commission to make a recommendation to village council to set the 63-day public comment period as required by state mandate or state law, and then looking at hopeful adoption in October after that. So that's our timeline of the rest of the project.
Kyle, can I ask you to kind of go back to the roles and responsibilities and give us kind of a understanding of who owns what and who's responsible for what?
Sure. So planning commissions under state act have the ability to either update the master plans on their own or seek third-party consultant, which is what the village has done to seek a third-party consultant on this. So moving forward, your role and responsibility in essence is to help guide the discussion, to help facilitate that as well of the master plan. You know, the planning commission is a recommending body to the village council ultimately for adoption of the master plan. So it will be at your recommendation to move items forward after staff has had a time to also provide a memorandum on that. So overall, your role moving forward is to provide feedback to ensure that as representatives of the village, it is the direction that the master plan needs to go. So that's a very condensed role of responsibility.
Okay, any other questions for Mr. Mucha? All right, thanks, Kyle.
Of course.
Thank you, Kyle.
All right. We have one action item on our list today for the DDA. So, Village Manager Mallory, I'll toss this one over to you.
Sure, and just to highlight this, when we're talking about this request, we are talking about 2022-23 fiscal year money. So this is not we will present at the next meeting our recommendations on the DDA's 23-24 budget. We're requesting a motion support and approval to invest up to $4,900 into marketing of the village. A significant, in the 90th percentile, will be all downtown activities. Not only Bird Days of Summer, we have 3 days that
The farmer's market will be downtown. We have October, we're looking at having a birthday bash celebration again. And then, of course, Christmas in the Berg in December. But to create at a higher level, we'll have a landing page, we'll have QR codes, and it's an image shop out of Grand Rapids. So I'd be happy to answer any questions. It provided the Plan Commission with that information, but staff's recommending a motion support and approval to have the village manager utilize up to $4,900 of DDA financing for this.
Jim, on the landing page, is that just kind of a splash page for people to take a look at and understand timing and dates and all that stuff?
I probably don't have enough time to go into my IT website design background, but I believe so.
Oh, okay.
I know it will be a standalone page that is connected to our website. A big component is the behind-the-scenes efforts. We're creating an email distribution list for communication from the village. A big focus is behind that, making sure we utilize everywhere we can to have people sign up to put in their emails and we communicate with them. But yeah, it'll look seamless, like a part of the website. It'll be a link on our website, but you'll see a big effort downtown to have the QR codes around this page. It'll highlight different aspects of the walkability, the social district, Oswald Park being a main emphasis for, and our goal is to get people to come to downtown Vicksburg out of curiosity minimum. And then these events will be some attraction midweek.
I can probably plug in just a little bit for you. It's probably the landing page from social advertising and promotion for people to plug in their information and for us to communicate with them on a regular basis through a MailChimp drip campaign. So I think it's a great idea. Any other comments or questions for staff? Go ahead.
Didn't we allocate monies for this about 2 or 3 meetings ago?
That's for the events that take place. That was, if my memory serves me right, $15,000. So far, the budget's approaching $40,000 for all the activities downtown. So this is separate than that allocation of money, yes.
I did have one question. I see that we've gone through with a company based out of Grand Rapids. How was that determined? Was there an RFP put out for?
No, it was developed through a relationship of different marketing tools they use locally for multiple other businesses in town.
Any other questions or comments for staff? If not, I'll entertain a motion for this action item.
Chairman Schenkel, I make a motion that we approve funding up to $4,900 so that the village manager may marketing, thank you.
Got ahead of myself. I'll support that.
Wasn't clear.
All right, and since this is dealing with finances, we will do a roll call vote. Mr. Holmes,
Yes.
Mr. DeBolt,
Yes.
Mr. Bishop,
Yes.
Mr. Wartella,
Yes.
Mr. Manchester,
Yes.
Ms. Plankenhorn,
Yes.
Mr. Newman,
Yes.
Mr. Cox, absent. Schenkel is a yes. Okay.
I failed to mention earlier, Mr. Cox is excused tonight. They have a death in the family that is the reason he's not here. So apologize, I didn't mention that before.
I do have one other item, and that's just each of the members will be receiving an email requesting if you want one-on-one contact for the 23-24 fiscal year. I'm more than happy to set that up. Quite often I have been setting that up via Zoom, but certainly can make myself available for one-on-one input as it relates to the budget involving the Downtown Development Authority or Planning Commission in general. So be looking for that email that'll come to each of you separately, more than likely tomorrow morning. If my technical skills have it set up properly.
Great, thank you. On to member comments. Any comments from this commission?
Chairman Schenkel, if I could. Would just like to acknowledge the great article in the Encore magazine about the village. I think it reflects positively, as multiple articles and news stations have on our community over the years. And I don't believe any of us think this is going to be the last one, but I think what it does show is that there's a sense of commitment, both those that came previously to us, to current village manager, staff, and citizens in the community. So I just think that, I think we've all read this, but it's really well written, and acknowledges again those who have made contributions to where the village is at today. So thank you to those individuals that have done that, and to the people of the community. We should be proud of what's said in here, I think.
Well said. I would echo that. The article is very well written, and if you haven't read it, I would encourage you to do so. Just want to say thanks to Mr. Mallory. Appreciate your leadership. A lot of this would not be possible without that, so thank you specifically to you. Any other comments from this body? All right. Time is 7:42. I will adjourn this meeting. Have a great week, everybody.